I think I'd like to take a little bit further here because you mentioned about the legal and constitutional issues, due process issues. In the 14th Amendment, you can lose life, liberty, or property, but not without due process. And yet with divorce, you lose all of them without due process. Somebody just comes in, and to me, it's almost civil asset forfeiture in many instances. People kicked out of their homes, assets divided, an order of child support. And we do this again in the best interest of the children. We have to make sure the children are protected. If you wanted to protect the children, you would stop granting needless divorces. Equal protection under the law. Both spouses should be entitled to equal protection under the law. Under no-fault divorce, that does not take place. The whole thing about no-fault divorce or unilateral divorce, it upends justice. Once again, the guilty party can file for no-fault or for unilateral divorce and be the winner against an innocent spouse. I know of many people, Joe, and you may know the same thing, that they're in a marriage relationship and the person who files for divorce because he has hooked up with his wife's best friend. Or how about another one? A couple are married and then the lady, or it could be the man, decides that they want to pursue a homosexual relationship. And what do? They file for no-fault divorce and they get the kids. And you're telling me that that's right? I can't see that. Then you have the state, the issue about if you have a marital contract. There is a contract clause in the Constitution under Article 1 that the state should do nothing to impair the obligation of a contract. And yet the state continually says, oh, the contract means nothing. Marriage contract means nothing. And I mean, there are a number of legal issues with this whole thing. Separation of powers doctrine. The judge is not acting as a judge because the judge always does what the legislature says he has to do. And now, in other words, he's acting as an enforcer of the law. He's not acting in a judicial capacity. That is a huge issue.
Well, I didn't want to steal your thunder on your legislation in Texas, but my personal hope and dream would be to have a constitutional amendment that would outlaw marriage licensure so that you couldn't have a license, that you would force marriage agreements into contracts or covenants depending on the two individuals' personal preference, because then it would force the individuals to come up with agreements that would be settled by the agreement.
Right.
There would be no need for a family court whatsoever if each individual had an agreement going into it, said this is our agreement.
Right.
And then we wouldn't have all these crazy statistics where we lump everybody together and say, well, you know, all these people have these divorces. No, they don't. They have an agreement that was breached by a person, and a person breached it, and the penalty that was in the agreement was activated, or it wasn't. You know, and if people make true covenants, true Christian covenants, then that's what that'll be.
Right. You know, there was one lady that I talked with, and she said her husband told her, had he known how much it was going to cost him, maybe he wouldn't have, maybe he would have kept his pants on, basically, And it's a shame because we've made it so easy that we almost reward the person for committing the breach of a contract. Let me just say that in the Republican Party, there is a plan in Texas that calls for the repeal of no-fault divorce. It's been there for a number of years. It's on the state platform of the Republican Party. I don't know why we aren't addressing it. The Democratic Party should want to see it because by and large, if you look at demographics, and if the demographics are correct that minority communities largely vote Democratic, look at the destruction that's taking place in their families and among their people in their party. That you look at constitutionalists. Constitutionalists wants the Constitution to be in effect. They should be behind the repeal of no-fault divorce for just the reason you're talking about, because it is a contract. We need to do nothing to impair the obligation of the contract. As our Constitution says, the states should not be doing that. The states, in my opinion, are acting in a manner contrary to the Constitution and causing great damage.